actually get started.
Cool. Enough time to get a beer and to put on my mouth filter so I don't F-bomb the mumble chat.
That would be a great thing.
You mean this Warcraft instructional video isn't going to be labeled NSFW?
I sure hope not.
Well, darn.
The underscore fire star entered channel.
Where do you turn off the voice in the Twitch?
You just hit the mute button.
Yeah, you just mute your stream.
There's this.
Ah, there it is. There, it was hidden by a little thing.
We're going to get started here in just a minute. I just linked one last time the twitch.tv channel that we will be broadcasting the stream in. If you want to have that open, you can see the video that's going to go along with this. Primarily what it's going to be is the Warcraft Logs website, and we're going to go through the various screens on there. So if you want to see the video for that, go ahead and do that. There'll be about a 20-second or so delay from what we're probably talking about with regards to the audio, so you'll maybe want to mute that if you're in the mumble channel here.
Just a quick question there, Megadeth. If you want some questions, how would you want that monitored or distributed? Are we in a raid channel as well? In guild? Just in the mumble channel?
We'll go over that here in just a minute. But there'll be opportunities to where we'll ask for questions, and you can just ask them in mumble here, or you can type them into the chat window that's in on the Twitch page.
Okay. Understood.
Kazma has entered channel.
Two more levels.
It looks like Twitch is being nasty right now. My chat's not loading on it.
Better fix it.
Channel Calamy. Link. to
Try that link.
twitch.tv.
I just have that in its own window. It's kind of convenient to have that separate.
Newlus entered channel.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to try and close Firefox and reopen the stream.
Firefox.
Google Chrome was running slow. Firefox runs faster.
What is this, 2003?
It's 2004.
Oh man, I was hoping the party like it was 1999.
For some reason, Google Chrome was just running really slow for me and crashing, so I just went to Firefox.
Well, if you want to be real old school, the Twitch chat is actually just a web interface for IRC, so you could join the chat that way. They got the good old MIRC.
That is old school. Gollies.
Yeah.
So you able to see the chat, Prize?
Not yet. This is unable to connect. I think that's an issue on my end.
Okay. I think we're going to get started. Even though you can't see that quite yet, you can keep working on it for a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the event, reading logs to become a better raider. I am Majadeth, an event planner for the Convert to Raid Guild on Airy Peak US. Most of you I know are in Convert to Raid as well, but there are some people who might be reviewing this on the recorded stream. So, with me tonight, we've got two reading log experts that are going to go through the logging screens and answer some of your questions. We've got Prize, DK Tank from the Alone Guild's main raiding roster. Alone, as you know, took down Mythic Imperator Margok last night for a realm first. Congratulations to them. And we also have we also have Kalani, the Pally healer from Working His Intended raid team. And he also does Hunter DPS on the Cat on Fire raid team. Both of those are CTR guild teams.
Hello.
So a few housekeeping items real quick before we start. The stream is being recorded and will be made available later.
It seems as if he got muted.
Yeah,
Fixing it. 1 second.
Okay, so I got muted there for a second. Sorry about that. So the stream is being recorded, will be made available later on. Watch Guild Chat at CTR Guild or my Twitter handle at DEcom. There'll be announcements made in all those places once it's available. I'm going to ask that you keep yourself muted when you're not asking a question. We don't want to get a lot of extra background noise on the stream for the recording. Because we've got a large number of people with us tonight, I'm going to ask that you try and hold the questions until spots where our experts ask for questions. Feel free to put questions in the Twitch chat. We'll try and keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions throughout. Plus, the second half of this discussion will be kind of an open Q&A. We'll even solicit logs if you want to submit logs for that at that point, and we can ask specific questions about your logs in particular. If you're watching this on Twitch, I'll try and keep a watch out for questions in the channel and ask on your behalf. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone who mentioned or tweeted about this event to help get the word out. Obviously, we've got a really big turnout tonight, and it only could be done because of all the promotion that the word of mouth promotion and various other promotion that you guys helped get this word out. So a couple quick things to keep in mind too. We're going to be going through the Warcraft Logs website, but this information we hope is going to be generic enough that you can translate it over to whatever logging site you use, whether it's World of Logs, Ask Mr. Robot, what have you. Once we get to that open Q&A and solicit questions based on your logs, we're going to be giving you blunt, honest feedback. And the comments that are made aren't meant to be personal. No one's trying to be cruel or make fun. They're just an honest assessment to try and help you get better. And we also aren't going to have a ton of time to spend on one person's logs. We're going to try and limit it to a few minutes each so that everybody gets a chance to ask some questions. With all that in the books, we're going to start things off by having Prize kind of walk through some of the World of Warcraft Logs screens and talk through some of the basics that you'll find on there and some of the things you should look for. Prize, take it away.
Alright, thanks. Still can't see that chat. I think I'm getting an echo from you too. Gonna blame Twitch on that one. But one of the primary issues that people have with logs and their rating is their deaths. So the first tab that we're going to go to is deaths. And I believe Mage Death has some of our logs pulled up for our farm the other week so we can analyze some of the deaths that our raid took. I'm not seeing on the stream either, so I don't know if you're caught up with me.
I just switched it over. We're looking at Kargath Blade Fist currently.
Okay, I see it. See now, the way it's set up is you see the time. So the people at the top are the people that died first, and the people that are at the bottom died last. And typically, you're going to want to analyze the ones that died first because as more deaths progress, it can cause more deaths from people that it's not usually their fault. With the case of Shavik, he got meleeed. And that was, you can just click on Shavik and you can see the actual breakdown of said death, and you could see what type of healing he received, and what he received it from.
I don't think I'm on the same screen.
You should be on deaths. There should be a tab up top.
For
It's deaths.
Sorry.
See the damage done? You just gotta go a little over to the right. It's right next to debuffs. Death. There it is. And now click on his name. Do you know how long of a delay this is?
Like 20 seconds.
Okay. Awesome. And that is probably the best way to analyze your death. Whether it's after raid, if you're still a little bit confused on how you died and how you can improve from that death. In this case, he started his AoE damage before I could even have a chance to establish threat on the ads, because he just used all of his AoE abilities, and it caused a lot of ads to start whacking him. And he didn't have a bark skin available to him because he had to use it earlier, which it could have saved him. And you can see when they last used their defensive cooldowns up at the top.
Which tab is that?
That is just right there. You can see it right on that survival ability. There is no tab. It's in the deaths. You see it says bark skin. Last usage. Yeah, that's a minute cooldown. And he would have been able to prevent that death if he didn't use it earlier for... he used it to stand in place and do more damage. Instead of moving out of stuff. Now I'm going to go over a little bit of tanking. Some of the basic things, as tanking is heavily involved with deaths and what you can do with and how to analyze it. The best way to do that is in that death tab, but also it has to be in it'll just be how you use your cooldowns, and I'll work on that more when if you guys have any tanking questions, I'll be able to point that out. And this is a universal across every boss fight in every instance. I don't believe we have any tank deaths to share with you on this logs. I'm looking really quick. Oh, perfect. You can go to Korag, Mythic Wipe number 2. And you should be able to click on Enya. In this particular one, Enya, he wasn't supposed to get the debuff, but he got a debuff where he normally has to run away from the boss. And what happened was he just didn't run, which it caused it within a global. So he took 2 melee swings 200 and one for 300,000 on top of the debuff tick. And right after he took most of his health and damage, he used his survival instincts. But it's gotta happen before he dies, not after. We can take any tanking questions you guys have right now, or any deaths that could be analyzed, or something of that nature.
Is there anything, Prize, that you look at besides deaths when it comes to kind of analyzing how you did on a given pull?
As a tank?
As a tank, yeah.
That's very difficult to explain, as every tank is different. From a general perspective, the way to analyze tank just tanking in general would be their active mitigation uses, which is buff uptime. So you can go to buffs, and I can't use Death Knight as an example for this, as we don't have buff uptimes, but you can go to the buff tab and go to Enya. It should be just all friendlies, Druid, Enya. And I would head over to the Butcher Kill when you do that.
And so this straight line that you see here, this is showing when it's up, and the gap is when it's not up, or
yes.
What are we seeing in that?
I would click directly on Savage Defense. You have to choose Enya. Right now you're on everyone in the raid.
Oh, sorry.
Scroll up a bit and you can just click the all friendlies thing. I still can't see chat if you guys are asking questions. Just scroll down a bit, and Savage Defense should be near the top. I know, that's the graph. You can clearly see when he doesn't have aggro on the boss itself, and when he is, and when he is actively tanking that boss, that's when the bar goes straight up and then plateaus, which is usually whenever there's an ability on the Butcher that is called it cleaves and it adds stacks. I have to look at the actual ability. I'm horrible for not knowing it. That applies a bleed to you.
Tenderize.
Which can be dodged. No, it's heavy-handed that you can dodge.
Oh, heavy-handed,
that's the stacks, yeah. So typically you'll want to get a Savage Defense up for as many heavy-handed as you can, considering that you can completely ignore that mechanic if it gets dodged. But from a broad perspective of tanking, the best way to judge your own tanking would be just to look at your active mitigation usage. Is it spread out? Is it too condensed into one area? Now, if it's too condensed into one area, it can lead in You can run into problems later in the encounter when you don't have any charges. Which you can get there every time by going to buffs, with the exception of Death Knight. Death Knight I can't go into right now as it would take up a lot of time. And I would prefer to do that. I would prefer someone to ask a specific question on Death Knight tanking to kind of give you guys an idea. From a broad perspective, you can also look at your cooldown usage, which would be in the same spot. You could just hit the back key on Warcraft Logs, go back to where you clicked on Savage Defense, and you can check, like, let's say, Survival Instincts or Bark Skin. I want to use Survival Instincts as an example. I'll answer that question really fast, actually. How many paladins are in your raid? Is it just you? In the case that we're multiple, yes. I would go back, Mage.
Okay, to which screen?
Just the one that you're on right there. And scroll all the way down to healing buffs. I'm going to use Eternal Flame as an example. Now, we only had one paladin in the raid at the time, but I can show you exactly how to differentiate it. You can click on Eternal Flame right there under healing buffs. Now you can see the breakdown right here. And you got 2 Eternal Flames from Clyde, and it's showing how many times Clyde put it up. Now, if there was a case of 2 Holy Paladins being in the raid, there would be a second, there would be another Paladin up. How there would be, you know, the Clyde would be here, and then there'd be someone right under him. I think Kalani wants to go over some broad stuff too, so I'm going to let him take a hold of that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, I mean, exactly where you are right now, but you can also look, if you scroll up just slightly, what you'll see is that on the left side where you will have, right now it says Anea, friendlies and enemies, that side is where you're selecting the target, and then to the right you're selecting the source and the ability. So if you're looking at specifically, you know, what buff did you get from a specific person, you can actually filter that to show who it's coming from. So in this example, you know, if you want to see what was Clydosaurus's uptime specifically, under all sources you would just click that and filter it down to the person in question's name, being the source of that buff. Likewise, if you wanted to see your uptime on that across all targets, you would simply select your name on the right-hand side for all sources, and then clear out the left side so that it would show all targets.
Just to repeat, that original question was someone asking Buff a question about buff uptimes, whether he could see how long he had a buff applied by a specific healer. For example, his own Eternal Flame buff on a tank.
So, Kalani, as a healer, which of these screens do you look at a lot when you go to look at logs after a night of raiding? Which ones do you typically look at, and what sort of things do you look at?
Right, so for things as a healer that I would look at, it is things like this, uptime of your buffs, whether that is classed with HOTS, what is your uptime on your crucial ones, as well as any kind of buffs, like you mentioned, Sacred Shield or Eternal Flame. The other major thing I look at is terms of damage taken. Who in the raid is taking the most damage. Obviously, you would hope your tanks would be number 1 and 2 on that. But it is also good to look at, is someone taking excessive damage? Is the whole raid taking excessive damage? As healers, we're very, very vulnerable to the raid taking too much damage. That requires us to go for more expensive spells. So that is generally one of the things you will want to address with your raid, is if people are taking too much damage. One of the best ways to do well as a healer is not having to heal a lot. Another thing that I oftentimes, and I'll come back to this, but another thing I also look at is resources. What do your healers' mana bars look like? Are they always completely out of mana? Are they often do you have one healer who's constantly out of mana while another healer who's always sitting at full mana? So if you go to the resources tab, you can then choose to look at on the right side under resources. If you flip that over to mana, and then filter it to only show your healers by clicking their names up at the top, make sure they're the only ones highlighted, it will give you a good idea of what does your healer's mana look like. Keeping in mind that for certain classes, specifically for paladins and monks, you also have to keep in mind that they have alternate resources, that they're also banking on chi and holy power. To answer the question that was just asked, how do you make the call of if someone is taking too much damage or if it is a question of healing output? A good thing to look at. One of the things you look at is on the damage taken. By default, it shows you who took the damage. It shows ranking by players in terms of the damage taken. one of the things you can do is you can switch it to damage taken by ability. And that will show you what abilities have been doing damage to your raid. It does require a certain amount of knowledge of the encounter to know what damage, what damage is avoidable versus what damage is unavoidable. So let's see. If we switch back to the Kargath fight, for example, abilities like Flame Gout are entirely avoidable. On a perfect kill, you would have basically 0 damage taken by Flame Gout. And take a look and see who's taking damage from it.
Which ability do you want me to highlight again? For the Kargath fight?
Well, rather than clicking on the name of the ability, up above where it says taken from ability, you can go to that. And sorry, I misspoke. Flame Gout is not avoidable. It's Flame Jet that is avoidable. So when we go to that view, you'll see, on that Kargath kill, a vast majority of the damage that was taken was from Iron Bomb, Flame Gout, melee. Those are things that aren't avoidable. That's just something healers have to go through. However, there are things like Maul, which that's 100% avoidable. You never want to get a hit by that. Flame Jet, there was a small amount of damage from it, not too much, but again, those are things that are avoidable. So you'll want to look at that. So, for example, if you click on Flame Jet, you'll see that there are a few people who did take a good amount of damage from them. Some people took 3, one person took 3 ticks, a couple people took 2 ticks of it. And that's, if you're having issues where people are dying, those are definitely one of the things you'll want to look at.
I remember that can apply to every single encounter, not just Kargath.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it comes down to, in general, having a knowledge of the encounter. But with any encounter, just look at the list of abilities that the damage is coming from, and then if you mouse over the tooltip, you have to mouse actually over the icon. All the way over on the left, but it will give you the tooltip for that ability. And just by reading it, sometimes it can give you a hint at whether or not the damage from that ability is avoidable.
And keep in mind that there are abilities that don't do any damage to the actual player that has the debuff on them, but also players around them. And you'd be able to find that out the same way.
Yeah, a good example, if you scroll the window back up, when you're on damage taken from ability, you can see there's a friendly fire option, all the way up at the top right. So for good examples of that, you can click on, just if you go to a fight that has something that does friendly fire damage, like Imperator, you can take a look and see, where is that coming from? Who is doing damage to other players, and who's taking that damage. Yeah, so in this example, you'll see forced nova replication, where there's the nova that goes out from Imperator, and as you pass through it, you explode. You do damage to both yourself as well as anyone nearby. So you can see, in this example, you're seeing Windwalker monks, Ret paladins, and Frost DKs and rogues. They're all taking tons of damage, as well as dealing tons of damage to each other. So that's this is a very good example where you could talk to the melee and say, hey, during that phase of the fight, make sure that when Force Wave is coming or First Nova is coming out, that you guys need to back off the boss a little bit, spread out, and don't kill each other.
There was a question in the Mumble channel. To avoid looking at stats after a wipe is called, what do you guys think is the optimal number of death before to ignore after?
I can take this one as I went through it about 175 times the other night overall, past couple weeks. What we started doing to just call it a wipe was basically how many battle reses we used in the fight. Now, that doesn't make the first death any less important than, let's say, the fourth death. But typically on a fight-to-fight basis, like a Butcher, you'll get 1 battle res, whereas Imperator Margok, you'll get about 5 or 6 overall. So let's say a DPS dies on Butcher. You have to res them because of the enrage timer. Now, if a healer dies right after them, well, let's say just 2 healers die right away after you res that guy. At that point, it's going to be a wipe, and it's worth wiping. But if another damage wipes, dies, for example, it's worth it to keep going on and keep working on killing the encounter. So to summarize what I said, it depends on how many battle reses you used and how many you have left.
So we got another question here. How can I evaluate myself for my personal ability, staying general, not just deaths, not looking to top the meters, but want to improve my abilities? I'm assuming this is from a DPS standpoint. Theonasm. DPS and heals.
I could take this one, I guess, since I believe Mage and I talked about this before we started, actually. Was you get the best way to improve yourself from a class-to-class standpoint is finding another player to compare yourself to. So you pull up your damage breakdown. You can click on a mage or a warlock, for example, and then the best way I found to do it is look for the players in a guild-like method. And then you choose one of their players of the same class and spec and compare them side by side. And the way to do the damage breakdown would be do exactly what just happened on stream. It's just click that and then you click their name and you can see exactly what abilities they use and what percent of the damage they used. What percent of damage those abilities did. And then you just compare those two side by side. And if, let's say, method isn't available, their logs, like you just have to search the guild name at the top. You could go for any other guild that's at the top of the world leaderboards on wildprogress.com to find a class that isn't hiding, a guild that isn't hiding logs for their progression.
We did look, and method actually is available on Warcraft Logs. You can just search method, and you'll be able to pull up logs from any one of a number of raid nights of theirs.
You want anything about buff up times to that, Kalani?
Yeah, just in general, a couple things you'd want to look at, and a lot of these are things we've already touched on. The first thing you look at, what abilities are you doing? What abilities are you using? Is it in general, of someone of the same class and same spec? Is it generally the same mix? Are you maybe overusing one ability, not using another ability that's on a cooldown, as often as you should? So that's one thing to look at. The other thing is, obviously, same thing with that, the number of casts. Just, for the duration of the fight, are you casting as many abilities as you should? And your active time on the main damage dealt page, what you can see right now, will give you a general idea of that. Other things you also want to look at is, again, going back to the buff list, and as a DPS, looking at your damage buffs. Are you using all of your cooldowns? Are you using them optimally? Are you using them during heroism or bloodlust, where you see that blue bar on the time meter at the start? As well as not waiting on them too long, because if you wait on them too long, perhaps you could have gotten one more use out of it during the course of that fight. Do you want to answer that one first, Prize?
Yeah, I can answer it. You're saying it's asked for Warcraft Logs specifically. Does Prize use the replay ability of the fight? Alright, that depends entirely on encounter to encounter. Like if you go over to a Bracken Spore kill, whether it's heroic or mythic, we typically tracked for the replay ability where the flamethrowers were. It's like a little map. I would just pull it up as an example. It's just a little replay tab up the top. Just to make sure both of the players aren't in the same spot using the flamethrower, if they could be on the other side of the room. Well, it's zoomed in a lot. We don't use it often, but we there is instances where you can use it. You see how all little dots move around as things start happening, and you'll see the three flamethrower users split off soon to start getting Moss dead. It's a very valuable feature, but it's nothing that you should have to look at every time you start evaluating logs.
And yeah, I'll go ahead and say, as a healer, this is actually can be very, very important to me, especially with this tier. There's been a lot of movement fights. I think probably one of the best examples on the fight we've been working on is twins. Just because tanks are very often, especially the whirlwind tank, tends to be moving long distances away from the raid. So what I actually use this for is to watch the habits of our tank, watching where they're moving, because especially myself as a holy paladin, I heal tanks a lot. So watching where tanks move, getting an idea of what the range of abilities are from a bird's eye view really helps me look and see and understand where I need to be positioning at which points in the fight, just to be sure that I'm not having my tanks outrange me. To grab a question out of the Twitch chat, do these replays record automatically? They do. This feature in itself, though, does require to have advanced combat logging turned on in your settings in WoW. And that's something we'll probably touch on a little bit later. But yes, it is automatically, assuming you set up WoW correctly.
You can also use it to, the same feature to make sure that your raid is stacking properly or spreading properly. You'll be able to find the players that are on top of one another if you have to spread for like the last phase of Imperator Margok on heroic difficulty.
Another question, Twitch, does it show stuff on the ground like the Twins fires? It does not. However, it does show when bosses are using certain abilities. So like in the example you see right now, you'll see Bracken Spores using the Infested Spores ability.
It will show the ads, though.
Yes, it does show any ads that are spawning.
You can see the key at the top. It actually shows the triangle for the spore shooters for this particular fight.
Now, if I'm not seeing other questions right now, so we can actually touch on this new feature that was added a few days ago, actually, and it's a problems tab. It's just called problems, where the Warcraft logs actually track problems or it thinks that it's a problem, all in one convenient area for every single encounter. Now, it's still a work in progress, so you're not going to see everything. As, for example, it wouldn't show anything in the choke all phase for us. Only the actual Imperator Margok for our mythic kill. He's actively updating it, though, and it should be ready soon. It's definitely worth checking out. Like, every player should be using 2 potions in the encounter. Like 1 pre-pot and 1 potion later on when it's most valuable, which changes consistently, and you could see which players only used 1 and which used 2. Making sure that everyone's using their health stone or their healing tonic, you can see which players didn't use it, when theoretically you're not going to have to use it for every single pull, but you can definitely see for like a whole night of healing tonics use. Like if one player has no health stones used all night, I would investigate a bit. And slow deaths I found to be somewhat inaccurate, but it does show deaths that technically could have been healed through. That doesn't mean that it was the healer's fault, though.
Ogren in the Twitch chat asks, what about death pack for DKs? Is that something that gets tracked on this page in some capacity? I guess I'm not familiar enough with DKs.
Death Pact is a personal healing cooldown that you can use on yourself, more as an emergency heal. It's almost exactly like a Hellstone, except when you do hit it, after it heals you, you receive a healing debuff that absorbs 25% of your max health in healing. It wouldn't show Death Pact usage as a problem in the Problems tab. That would show up in healing received, and you can see the Death Pact. The actual debuff itself will show up in the debuff section, and I believe it's still called Death Pact. I used that millions of times. I'll look for you really quick. Yep, Death Pact debuff shows up in the debuff section, and then you have to go over to the healing to see the actual healing from Death Pact. Yeah, I love that summary page too, from some of the stuff in Twitch. He's still working on it though, so I wouldn't take everything it says as a problem or actual problem yet.
Yeah, I found death pack in the healing tab.
Anyone have any questions on the Problems tab?
So I have a quick question. I know that most of you guys probably are more professionals on this, but I'm kind of just learning logs. And so when I just generally go and look at them, it really just looks like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff and some numbers. What would somebody just kind of getting into reading logs, like what should they do? Would they really be looking at themselves individually? Would they be looking at their team as a whole?
Logs are almost always meant to improve your personal gameplay, because that's the way that if you can get better as a player individually, that helps your team as a whole too. So if you were just starting out, I would work on your own performance rather than other people's performances, unless you're a raid leader that's interested in seeking out some errors or working on fixing some wipes. And the place to start for personal performance, I would say start working on not standing in stuff, and see if you're standing in anything bad for every encounter that you are doing. and then start comparing your damage after that. Always make sure that you're performing the mechanics properly before you start worrying about your damage.
So start with the damage taken report and looking at the different abilities and seeing
Yep.
what you're
the problems
taking
tab
damage
is
with.
awesome for that too. Like I would head over to a Tectus kill under problems. And I'm pulling it up myself actually right now. Alright, Tectus problems. Let's say your team is struggling on Tectus, or you're struggling on Tectus. I would go straight down and see if you died to Crystalline Barrage or not, because that's something that you can't stand in. The Problems tab will have everything that can be technically avoided right in one convenient spot. And if you see your name showing up there, you know, then there's something that you know you got to work on, and you can improve from there. You can even click directly on the player to see the breakdown on the graph. That's, in my opinion, the best place to start, is just go right over to the Problems tab. I would ignore slow deaths for now, though, until that gets under control from the developer and the web team. But like the Earth Pillar right there, it'll one-shot you no matter what. There is no avoiding it. So it's basically like a void zone on the ground, and a pillar pops up. Yeah, there's no living from that. Just make sure that you're not consistently in any of the problems. You know, you're gonna make mistakes. Everyone in the world makes mistakes. I wouldn't be too hard on yourself if you see yourself there every once in a while. I see question in chat. I noticed for tectonic upheaval, it shows personal cooldowns used. How do you know who casted what if you have multiple classes? Alright, tectonic upheaval. I'm actually reading that right now. Seeing as I don't think that's implemented yet, but I believe they're going to work on adding that soon. Usually these have it. For tracking personal cooldowns used, you would go into buffs received, and you could check your own buffs from there, as we touched on earlier. What we did with like the Eternal Flames. Because that looks quite incomplete, that tectonic upheaval part.
So do we want to switch this over to kind of if anybody has a log that they'd like and has a specific question about that log that they'd like to ask. Or was there anything else question-wise that anybody had regarding the problems tab or anything that we've kind of covered so far through this?
I see a repeat question in chat that we touched on earlier about comparing DPS and improving your damage. How do you compare parses over just DPS for the class and spec? And the way we explained earlier was you just search a guild that is probably one of the best in the world, like Method, for example. You're going to pull up your damage breakdown, compare, and then pull up on a mage and Method's damage breakdown. You can compare them side by side and see what you're doing differently. You can also do the same thing for your buff up times, like Slice and Dice for a rogue is a good example of that too. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask before we actually do personal log evaluations? If you guys have any links you can give to us.
Somebody had asked, what did you mean by parsecs?
That was just a misspell.
Yeah, that was me asking for a clarification for someone asking a question.
I should pay attention.
There's a lot more we can go over, but it'll be much easier to point out if you guys are having trouble with something that we might have not even thought to explain, something very simple, but could, save your life for your whole raid, for example. So feel free to link us some logs if you guys have anything. Kalani, you can take this one.
Sure. So the question being asked is for, how do you actually log a fight? So there's kind of two parts to it. First, you have to capture the log in the game client. The second part being actually uploading it to your site of choice, whether you're using Warcraft Logs, World of Logs, Ask Mr. Robot, any site. The question being asked, another question that was tossed in, can you use it for other than raids? Yes. It will not break it into boss segments the way it does for raids, but it will still actually put the logs up. So, for the first part, as I mentioned before, there are certain features that only work if you have advanced combat logging in. So, once you're in game, just go ahead and hit escape and go into system. And then under the network category, there is an option called advanced combat logging. You'll want to make sure that's turned on. It does put a little extra strain on your network connection, but it's fairly insignificant. Most people will have no problem turning that on. So once that's checked, go ahead and hit OK. To actually capture the log, all you need to do is in your chat log, in your chat window, just go in and type /combat log, all one word. And what that will do is that it will start creating a copy of the in-game combat log, along with some additional information like timestamps, in your World of Warcraft folder in the logs folder. It'll create a file, if it doesn't already exist, called combatlog.txt. If that file already exists, it will start adding to it. So keep in mind that if you continuously do that, you could end up with a very, very large file. So you'll want to clear that out every now and then, or after you upload a log once you're done with it. Once you're done, you can go ahead and type /combat log again, and it will stop logging. Oftentimes, remembering to type that /combat log when you start raiding can be the most difficult part of this. So to that end, people oftentimes use an add-on to do so. The Ask Mr. Robot add-on does have an option to do that, but there are other add-ons out there like Loggerhead, again, all one word, and those, pretty much all of those add-ons can be configured to say, I want to automatically turn on my combat log if, say, I'm in the Highmall raid zone or in the Blackrock Foundry raid zone. So if you're watching the stream, you can see that we've got the Ask Mr. Robot add-on, and you can see right there, there is the option for the combat log, and you can tell it to always log Highmall and always log Blackrock Foundry. Keep in mind that goes across all difficulties, so if you're going into LFR, it will log those too. So you'll need to, before you start your normal raid, go ahead and just clear out that combatlog.txt file. Once you actually have a combat log captured, then you'll need to upload it. Pretty much all of the websites that do logging have their own client. So you'll just need to go to that site, register yourself an account if necessary, download their client. Each of those is a little bit different, but in general, you'll point it to, you give it your login credentials, along with pointing it to that combatlog.txt file. And again, that's in the World of Warcraft folder /logs. And then just wait for it to upload. Usually when you're done, it will give you a link to your log, and there you go.
So do we have a log to look at here, Prize?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go over the heroic Imperator pulse. And I'm going to actually choose, it should be linked in the Twitch chat. I'm actually going to choose pull number 12 as that's their longest attempt.
Is it from Sir Meatwad? Is that who?
No.
Oh. Which log am I looking?
It's going to be from IME 2006.
Sorry. Then which poll?
Pull number 12.
I linked it into Mumble if anybody wants to look at it.
Now, I'm actually starting at analyzing this wipe and what they did wrong first under deaths to see who died first and what they died to. Yeah, I can. All right. It looks like what you wiped to is there's still a mage alive. No, we're not going to laugh at you. We're here to help you. Now, for this particular poll, it looks like you guys exited the phase with one mage alive, and it started causing tank deaths. And for this first tank death right here, and a tank death on a fight can be very serious sometimes. So when you're hovering over Reynolds, you could see the Force Nova replication, which is basically another person standing on top of him. And if you hover right over the replication, you could see who actually was standing on top of him and who was applying additional damage to that tank that shouldn't be applying that damage. So it was just an improper spread. It doesn't look like the spreading actually looked quite well other than that, but it still caused a tank death, which can create a domino effect. The Orb of Chaos, you said you guys touched on that. And then you started dying. You lost a healer, a feral, a resto shaman, all to a mage being alive still. So, I would work on making sure that mage dies as fast as you can, whether it be a priority issue, killing the Reaver last, or just making sure that everyone's doing proper damage to the mages rather than trying to pad on the ads that are spawning during that phase. Later on, after all those damage started dying from the mage and the healers, it looked like everyone started dying from this thing called Collapsing Entity, which is the pulsing AoE that the ad does when it spawns to the entire raid. And that stacks up. That stacks up fast, and it becomes hard to catch up after a while. Decided to leave a mage up for progression. If you decide to leave the mage up for progression, that's perfectly fine, but you have to make sure that people are spread properly. I would personally recommend just killing the mage, as it's just it can create a lot more healing, and there's already a lot in that phase as it is. It looks like a lot of people died to Collapsing Entity though, which is the third ad. It looks like you guys had trouble with the third ad. Because if you hover over it, Collapsing Entity thing, it says Replicating Arcane Aberration, and then there's a 3 by it. That 3 is the ad number that spawned in that phase. I would work on swapping to the ads more. That could have just been part of the domino effect that just the domino effect that happened when he lost 2 healers. You can go downhill from there. Now I really want to help Sir Meatwad. That's actually a healing analysis log, so Kalani, I'm going to go with that. He posted what he kind of wants analyzed with that, because I don't know much about healing, you know way more than me.
Did I click the right? No, that's the...
Sorry, I was missing a couple digits on that first link.
Well, this is a very familiar list of raiders, given that I am in this log.
He says check Korag, and Imperator.
Okay. Well, given I've already had this conversation, so let me read your question again. You're wasting a lot of potential chi by using chi generation moves when you already have full chi. So, let's actually walk through it, because I already know the conclusion of this one. Mazer, yes. So one of the things you'll want to look at, again, is let's go to the healing tab first, and look at just in general, what's the overall healing throughput? You know, how many people are in the raid, and how many healers are in the group. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's start with Imperator. So looking at it, you'll see, there's 5 healers in this group, and there are 21 raid members in the fight. You'll see that, in general, healing is fairly spread out between all 5 healers. But again, this is 5 healers on heroic in a raid group with 21 people. That's fairly stacked on healers for this fight. So the next thing we're going to look at is if you click on over to the Resources tab, you'll want to go ahead and select the Mistweaver Monk, SETI, and then switch the resources to Chi. And what you'll end up seeing is that over the course of the fight, you'll see raw gain, wasted, and effective gain. So you'll see that over the course of the fight, there was 1 chi wasted from Expel Harm, 2 from Spin Crane Kick, and 17 from Renewing Mist. So it becomes a question of, why is the chi from Renewing Mist being wasted? So one of the things we then want to look at, what spells is this is this monk casting? So again, just go ahead and if you go back to healing and look at the abilities, you'll see a decent amount of uplift, Renewing Mist, Revival. If you compare this, however, to other logs of other monks on this same fight, I don't have any logs handy, but what you'll end up seeing is that uplift use is actually fairly low. There was only 1 death on this fight. If you click over to deaths, you'll see that there was only 1 death in the group for this fight, and that was someone dying to Mark of Chaos. That's someone standing too close to the tank when they have that debuff. That's not healable. That if someone stands that close to a tank when that goes off, they're basically going to die. So there was no lack of healing. What you end up seeing here is that just in general, people were healthy. People were at full health, and just in general, when you have a monk who is, and my play as a Mistweaver is fairly limited, but from my knowledge, that when you have full chi, the raid is fully healed, you're better off casting that Renewing Mist. in order to get, to have more renewing mist around the raid for when you do need to uplift, and still have that chi banked for when that healing is needed. So while that chi is quote unquote wasted, I don't think it's improper play. So, again, it does show in the logs as wasted chi. It's something good to look at to understand why. But, wasted chi, wasted holy power, for healers isn't always incorrect.
I'm actually going to make him a mechanical suggestion to someone that we just looked over his logs. It looks like you were killing one mage, then one reaver, then leaving the mage alive. I would continue with that, but I would kill that second mage. That's your class. It's a ret paladin. Go ahead, Kalani. I don't know much about ret paladin.
Okay. Is there a certain... Let's see, what fights do we have? Is there any specific fight you'd like us to look at? Okay, no specific fight. Looks like there's also multiple difficulties here. Well, since it's a ret paladin, let's go with simple. Let's go with a butcher normal kill, since that's a pretty straight up tank and spank for melee. Just give me a minute or two to take a look at what's here.
So where would you start looking?
So first thing I'm starting with is I went ahead and went to damage done, and then I clicked on the player's name to look at what abilities are being cast. And what we're seeing is a lot of Hand of Light, which is the Ret Paladin Mastery. And that's kind of just a passive thing that's there. It's not actually something you cast. So what we're seeing is Final Verdict, which is your Holy Power Spender. Hammer of Wrath, which is kind of your execute ability. And then Judgment and Crusader Strike, which is what you should be expecting to see. So after that, again, kind of going back to our previous question, I'm going to go ahead and head over to the Resources tab and look at your Holy Power generation. And we'll see that over the course of the fight, there was about 90 holy power generated. 3 holy power wasted. That's not terrible. Generally, as a ret paladin, you don't want to be wasting any. But that's just a little slight fix. But in general, good. So next thing I'm going to be looking at, I'm going to go ahead and head over to the buffs tab. And let's look at your damage buffs. So, as a ret paladin, pretty much all of your cooldowns have been consolidated into Avenging Wrath. So this was a 3-minute fight, and looks like you got 2 uses out of it, which is about what you'd expect. I mean, overall, that fight tree looks pretty solid. The only thing I see missing is that there was only, again, if you head back to the buffs, there was only 1 potion used. So that you used a draining strength potion right at the beginning of the fight. It's hard to tell. I can't tell if you pre-potted or not. And again, that's one of those things where if someone pulls early, you miss the pot and you only get 1 use. But yeah, just getting that second strength potion used probably during heroism.
You can check that under buffs. It shouldn't be under potion, be under damage buffs, or it should.
Yeah, it's like right at the beginning, but if you click it right as the tank pulls, it puts it on cooldown.
Yeah.
Would this be an opportunity to be able to look at, like, they have 2 ret paladins in their guild or in their raid team? Would you be able to compare?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You can look between them, look for similarities, look for differences between what the 2 are doing. But overall, they're actually very, very similar.
Again, the best way to compare them would just be bring them up side by side in separate windows.
Yep.
If they added a compare button at the top, I swear. That compare button at the top will work. The developer snuck that in a few days ago, it seems. That wasn't there before. I would click... Gosh, that's embarrassing. You can just compare another Warcraft Logs link. Click compare, then just drop a link in there. You would have to seek out the player yourself, though, if you want to compare yourself. Warcraft Logs is going through a lot of changes right now, and he's adding and beta testing quite a bit. You learn new things every day, even me.
Do we have another one we're going through?
There's a Warlock one that we're going through. I'm actually working on pulling up a comparison. Hold on a bit, we're just looking over it. As neither of us play Warlock, I think the best way to do this is actually do the new compare tab that was pointed out to us. And we can do it with Sparkugs from Method.
I'll say that seems like cruel and unusual punishment. Alright, we're gonna take you up against a method Warlock. Let's see how you're doing.
The numbers will be much different, but the breakdown should be similar. About what does more damage. Now there is going to be a bit things, but I think it's the best way to compare someone that's playing the Warlock properly to help yourself improve the most. I do it to myself all the time too.
Do you have a link that you want me to use for the compare?
I'm actually going to use it. Let's go Butcher. I'll pull up the link. Hold on. I'm actually having trouble finding someone that's playing the same spec as him. Do you have a Destruction Warlock in your raid, Kalani?
I don't think in that log. Yeah, no, Meter's been playing Demonology lately.
Well, just from first glance, based on I play Warlock not a lot.
I played a little bit.
The first thing I noticed from a damage breakdown from the Butcher, from the log that he linked, under Analyze and Damage Done, was Chaos Bolt was under Incinerate, and I don't think that's wrong. I think that's a gear thing, where he won't be having enough Ember generation at low gear levels as he would at high levels.
Yeah, one thing I am seeing, just real quick, it looks like you're, and this, yeah, maybe I'm outdated, but it does look like you're still using Rain of Fire. Ember generation on Rain of Fire got nerfed to the ground. That unless you're hitting a lot of target, unless you're actually hitting multiple targets, Rain of Fire does not do enough ember generation anymore to be worth it.
I also noticed that you do not have 100% uptime on your Immolate. That should be 100% uptime on Butcher, considering it's a single target fight, and you won't ever be out of range as a range DPS. So I would work on keeping 100% uptime on your Immolate. Yeah, I think the Embers have been completely taken away from him too.
Yep.
Chaos Bolt right under Incinerate seems right, as you won't have enough crit to get more Embers from Incinerate at lower gear levels. And work on that Immolate.
Yeah. The only other thing I'm seeing, and I'm trying to figure out this by looking at the log. What strategy are you using in regards to when you're casting Chaos Bolt? You know, are you building up to full embers, popping a cooldown, and then casting multiple Chaos Bolts? Right, just in general, unless there's something specific you're saving, certain phase, certain certain ad that has to be burned quickly. In general, what you want to do is build up your embers. When you get to full embers, that is when you want to be using Dark Soul, as well as it looks like you're using the Sandman's Pouch drink. Well, that's a random proc. That's not a unuse. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay.
Now, on top of that, you don't want to be using Dark Soul. If your Sandman's hasn't procced it, it would be much more beneficial to hold on to those Chaos Bolts, especially if you're not capping your own resources, and pair Dark Soul up with that Sandman's Trinket proc.
Right.
And dump your Chaos Bolts. But don't ever let your Embers cap. Neither of us, by means, are full-blown Destruction Warlock experts, though. You will get a lot of benefit out of comparing yourself to other Destruction Locks. Do we have anyone else that wants some logs analyzed?
All right. Looks like this might be wrapping up. So one last call if you have a log that you'd like to have looked at. I'd like to thank Prize and Kalani for taking time tonight to go through the Warcraft Logs site, give us an overview and go through some specific reports.
We had fun doing it too.
Yeah, thank you guys for showing up.
All right, I think we're gonna close things out. Again, thank you, Prize. Thank you, Kalani. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight and participating in this event as part of the 2-year anniversary of the CTR Guild. So glad all of you could make it. And we definitely want to do something like this again in the future. If you guys have any other suggestions on events for the CTR Guild, please contact an event planner or contact Turarts, the event planner lead. And like I said, this was recorded, and I will get this, make this available and get the link to you in the guild or via Twitter or both probably, so that you can pass it along to anybody else that might be interested. Thank you all, and I guess that's good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Don't forget to follow Warcraft Logs on Twitter if you do have that. They constantly post changes they make and new additions to the site.
Yeah, and you can definitely follow, Prize or Kalani.
That's a good suggestion. Put back up on the stream the Twitter account for each of our guests. Prize is at Prize of Alone. Kalani is at Keyboard Kalani. And then I am at Deckhome. Thank you again, guys. Really appreciate you taking time tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Sorry, I was muted. I don't know why that came on.
Odd.
Yeah, it's been doing that lately.